And we are live. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Overwatch League Network, the podcast with Deadeye on all the latest Overwatch League news, information, and esports analysis. I am your fill-in host, Totemly Drunk, and tonight on episode 157, we're talking power rankings. That's right. Tonight we are kicking off our power rankings, focusing on the bottom two Overwatch League teams in the East, as well as the bottom four in the West. And of course, there's still a lot of unknowns. We've seen, little bits and pieces with some exhibition matches. We still don't know the full rosters of all the teams, specifically when it comes to the Chinese Valiant being operated by LGE, but we'll get into that here in just a little bit. So as you can tell, Booger is in Twitch chat tonight, or this afternoon. I don't know why I said tonight. It's just we're always recording at night. Now it's not the case because Nura's working nights now, and yeah, here we are. But anyway, so Booger is going to be out for a little bit. Hopefully he'll be back with us shortly. But in the meantime, you guys are stuck with me again. I know it's been a while, but just in case you've forgotten, this is Overwatch League Network. This was one of the brain children of myself, Slambo, and Spider, and I'm happy to be back here talking Overwatch League with my good friend Anura. Anura, how are you doing this afternoon?
Good. I'm excited. I always love Power Ranking seasons. I like when people tell you that you're wrong after, like 10 weeks of actual play. But right now it's really fun just to try to put it through your brain and really put together. So I'm excited to be back. It's been a bit. And so I don't know about you, but I'm ready to jump right into it.
Absolutely. But, unfortunately, we can't really do that because while all of our power rankings have been going on, we've had a little bit of drama happening. There's been a lot of back and forth between Elo, uh, Hell, and Uber in regards to casting gigs and just the organization basically like undercutting pay when it comes to the casters. So Avril is not going to be casting Contenders Korea this season, which he's kind of been at the forefront of for quite some time now. And there's been a lot of discussion going on where like Hooper said time and time again, like, I'm putting my foot down. Everyone's kind of like heralding me as like this hero right now, but soon enough, maybe he'll be the clown in this situation. It's been an interesting thing watching it unfold, and at the end of the day, it really shines a light on some of the shoddy practices that we have been seeing with Elo Hell, where basically uh they're trying to transition casters into a more prominent role, but at the start of it, they're basically like doing it as just like practice. And it's just a jumbled mess. And it's been bittersweet knowing we're not gonna get some of the voices that we're used to hearing throughout contenders. And it sucks in some regards. It's also another opportunity for someone else. But at the end of the day, the casters need to get paid what they're worth. And it's been a very common practice here as of late where they're taking, 50, 60% pay cuts in order to work a gig. So, it's impacting themselves and by not kind of bending of knee. I don't know if that's even the right way to put it, but by not lowering the standard, so to speak, they're now finding themselves out of a job, and it's just a shitty situation for them to be in right now.
Yeah, I mean it's terrible, but I think the good news is that Avril and Pixie will be coming back. That was announced earlier today as the Korean contenders. I don't know about anyone else and how that's working for everyone else. But Elo Hell came out with a statement talking about the whole situation and what they did wrong. Pretty humble stuff. I would go through the whole thing, but it's pretty lengthy. But it seems like they're trying to fix their wrongdoings, which is really good from a company. A lot of people try to like shift the blame. It seems like they're just going
Mhm.
straight for it. I really do respect that from them. And from that going forward, I think first of all, I love what Uber's doing. And on Twitter, I think it's first really entertaining for most people. and second, he's setting a standard for casters for, I mean, the potential future of esports, which it really does need to happen. And so I think ELO, it sounds good. They're like, hey, we're giving volunteers an opportunity to learn to be professionals. That sounds good on paper, but when you look at it straightforward, when you're looking at bigger gigs, the now contenders, it's a huge gig. You can't just have complete volunteers working on this honestly really important product for the Overwatch League and Overwatch in general. And so in general, I think that good on Uber, good for Elo to recognize their mistakes. Hopefully they rectify what's happening. Hopefully we get. I hope we get what we want, honestly, which
Mhm.
is we want good casters. We want the casters that deserve this spot. We want to be paid well, and really just it all just gets fixed.
Right on. There's definitely been some issues within the system, and I remember at one point here, it was within the last month or two that Uber was ranting about a lot of the ongoing happenings with casters in Valorant. So it's not like this is just a one esport thing that's going on. There's been these practices kind of like throughout the board at this point, which is definitely interesting to see as who people are getting timed out in chat. Fantastic. But anyways, so yes, there's been drama this week. That was not the only drama. There was also a social media post from Sinatra's ex-girlfriend accusing Sinatra of sexual assault. And I don't want to go into like grave details about all of the accounts here. Just in case we have any sexual assault survivors or anything like that. I don't want to put like a trigger warning at the start and at the end of the episode, even though that is kind of customary at this point. But basically, there was a statement released here the other night on social media, basically saying that Sinatra was refusing to use birth control. He manipulated his ex-girlfriend and guilt tripped her into having sex over the course of this 9-month relationship that they had been in. And also included within the statement from her was honestly what has been one of the more pretty damning like audio clips in regards to like the Me Too movement that we've seen at this point, where it's pretty clear Sinatra's continuing to make advances even though she's saying no like 5 times within like this 20-second span. Now, in the past, there have been certain situations that the league as a whole has kind of fumbled the way that they have responded. But the league was very prompt getting at the head of this one. So the league is actually offering refunds to players who have purchased the Alien Zarya skin, which was the MVP commemorative Sinatra skin that was implemented into 2019 season. And since then, we've seen Sinatra being suspended by Sentinels, which is the Valorant organization that he is currently competing with, as well as Riot Games from the ongoing Champions Tour North America Masters. So basically, right now, if you do not want the skin in your collection, you could get the refund of 200 Overwatch League tokens. The skin will then be removed from your account. And they're even going as far as removing the championship and MVP badge that is on the skin for the players that are still having it within their collection. But that's not going to happen until a later date at this point. So I had to say, like, I was curious to see what sort of response we were going to see from the league or how long that response was going to take. And the fact that they were this prompt with it and, they took immediate action was a nice change of pace because for so long we've seen issues, whether it is player specific, whether it's based off of sexual assault or any allegations or anything like that, that a lot of the times these issues are kind of just like dragged through the mud and they're played out over this long course of period. And there's times where we don't know what's going on, or they do this investigation, but then they don't talk to both parties, and it's been a jumbled mess at different aspects depending on who they're dealing with. But in this case, I feel like they really hit it right on the nose, and whatever happens with this, at least we've seen the Shock speaking up. You've had the League speaking up. Sentinels released their statement. Of course, Sinatra has also, denied all the allegations. And, you know, every time we tune into social media, there always seems to be one of these posts going on. And I hate the discussion that always kind of goes with that because one, it's definitely uncomfortable to talk about, especially in podcast form. But just seeing the reaction from the community is always an interesting thing to like kind of like put your finger on the pulse because you have the one side on Valorant who are just like, oh, that's kind of shit, but I hate when people use like the boys will be boys mentality, and then you have like the other side who are just cutthroats. Like, all right, he's done. Like that's the end of his career, and honestly, that probably will be the case based off of the audio clip that we have seen. But I don't like the motive of, well, this is clearly just a relationship that didn't set clear boundaries. Like I hate when people are trying to put that point across because they're just trying to shine a different light on the situation, or they're just trying to put the blame on a place that it shouldn't really be directed towards. So it's a crappy situation. The league handled it promptly, they handled it well, and if you are looking to get the alien Zarya skin removed from your collection, you can do so and use those skins towards another purchase.
Yeah, yeah. And I might be doing that because I bought the Zarya skin. If I have an opportunity to do that, I like the new Shock Hog skin. Have you seen that? That looks pretty sick.
It's dope.
Uh, yeah. For me personally, I didn't want to talk about this in Twitter form just because how much information was like spewing out at the time. I didn't want to flood people with more of the same.
Mhm.
But my situation is, of course, I think that what the Overwatch League doing is perfect. What Sentinels has been doing so far, I think that everyone's handled this really, really well on like at the professional level, and I respect them a lot for that, and I respect I think her name's Cleo for coming out.
Mhm.
I think Sinatra, although did not have the best response, the fact that he has responded, it looks like there should be follow ups. That could be good for him if whatever happens with him. I don't know what's going on with him. At the end of the day, I it really does not matter. He's in Valorant. I don't really care about Valorant in my opinion. Um, but so far, I think that everyone's handled it well, which based on other like previous things has not been the same. I think this is the first time I've seen such a good handling of a situation like this, and I respect everything about it. And I want more information to come out, but I'm pretty dead set in thinking that what happened happened. I hope that she gets closure. I hope that he has changed his ways, if not changing his ways. And I hope everything turns out good. I think for just to have the option of getting rid of that skin in the game was a big deal because I mean I think that's just the perfect way to go about it. And so yeah, I mean shoot, it's a hard topic. It's really hard to figure out what to say, how to say about it. But all I'm gonna say is I think most people have handled it pretty well. That's really all I have to say.
Yeah, funny is bringing up an interesting point in chat saying how awkward would it be if Overwatch League releases a Shock Championship skin the day they allow for refunds on the Alien skin? Okay, so I'm not worried about that. Obviously, when it comes to situations like this, you have to read the room. If there was a situation where this actually occurred, everyone would just be like, so you still wanted to support, the organization, which is, I mean, I think that's okay. Obviously, the Shock released their own statement. I don't know if the relationship was actually happening during like his stint with the Shock, or if
It was during the season 2
okay,
stint.
that's also good to know. But I can't imagine them lining up because I'm pretty sure they're already allowing refunds at this point. I just don't know when those refunds are actually being processed because that's really the big question.
Yeah.
But would that look poorly? Absolutely. I don't think you can deny that. So drama aside, that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to dive into the 2021 season, specifically when it comes to our power rankings, and the way that we're gonna do that this season. And I don't know what the long picture is, but for now, we are going to do the bottom two within the East, the bottom four within the West, and we'll continue that trend. And maybe after we get through both conferences, maybe we'll revisit and do, uh, the whole 1 through 20 at
Whole
that point.
shebang. If
Because
you have the time,
at,
for
at
sure.
at some points you gotta combine everything, even if it's just us posting our respective rankings over on our social media or in Discord at that point. So let's start with APAC. We're talking about the East here. And, there's been a lot of discussion about the East. There's a lot of storylines you can kind of dive into, whether it's a Philadelphia Fusion trying to uh, reverse the course that they've been on every time they step in Korea, where they've shat the bed. You have the LA Valiant being sold to LGE, and the fact that we don't know a single person on this roster outside of the rumor mill. Because like really the only known are in the rumor mill right now is really like the bad problem child Crystal being a DPS on the team. But outside of that, we have no idea. We have other teams who have kind of taken a step backwards in some of their signings. And it's we also have other teams moving to NA instead of competing in APAC. So there's a lot of things in flux right now over in APAC. But I think if there is one thing the community can universally agree on at this point, knowing what we know now, nobody in good faith can argue to rank the Valiant any higher than last place, whether it is conference wise or whether it is within the league itself. Just because there are so many unknowns, we don't know any official roster member at this point. Don't really know who's going to be coaching the team or who's on the staffing or anything like that. And the crappy part about this is we kind of see parallels from the runaway Vancouver Titans fallout to what is going on here in a sense that they're entering a scene now where they're basically picking up scraps. This isn't a team that is really expected to win games. But the bigger question at the end of the day is whether or not the LA Valiant within the APAC and in the Overwatch League are going to be competitive year one, or if this is just one of those situations where they're just trying to get by. And in that case, I don't know what that's going to mean for the contract statuses for the players that they do pick up for the 2021 season. But this could be a similar situation to what we saw results wise than say like the Washington Justice this past season before they went out of their way to pick up Decay. Like this could be a 2 to 4 win team throughout the entirety of the season. And, even that could be considered a stretch. We don't know at this point. So Nura, like I know you and I are pretty much on the same page here. Like the Valiant are basically just jockeyed in that 8 spot. We were both kind of arguing at one point like we shouldn't even rank them, which I think also would have been fair. But it's ranking them 8th or just not ranking them virtually is going to be the same result in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, they ain't it. Valley ain't it for sure. I mean, they're just not. It'd be lucky for them to get a win from what we've heard. I mean, do we even know if they have a full roster yet?
You know,
And the season's in 35 days. I mean, phew. Um, I think this is literally like, hey, we want to keep our spot in the league, but we don't want to pay them well right now. We don't really want to do anything with the spot. We just want to make sure we have it just in case it's like a good spot for the future. I don't get the I it's just it's frustrating seeing this. It still is, which is crazy. But it's just the lack of care for. I mean, they built a full fan base in NA, and then they just threw it away.
Mhm.
And they're building this team from what we've seen. I think they had one other player. I don't remember. It was a hit scan player. I really didn't pay too much attention to it. I'm blocked by Halo anyway. So I mean, at the end of the day, what am I supposed to do with that? But based on what they got Crystal. He looked decent during like one game, season two, and then ran off and did his own thing, and then he went on charge as like a backup DPS player. Now he's going to be on Valiant probably. He just seems like he's looking for some extra cash. That's fine. Hit scan player. I don't know anything about him. There's nothing I could say about this team other than even even if they built a decent team, I still don't see them doing well in APAC. It's a strong region, really strong region. I don't think there's enough players in just the Chinese scene alone to make a solid past bottom ranking team. Like there's no players left. They'd have to trade for players. And they're not going to spend money for that. So it's like you have to under every circumstance put them at the bottom, and they're obviously ready for that. They're ready to be on the bottom. So yeah, welcome.
Yeah, one
But
of the things that I've always appreciated about the APAC region in particular, with the Overwatch League, is just the fact that it is so competitive. Like, I know on the NA side, we always joked about, okay, like, okay, we have the top three, we have the bottom three. Um, and then, you have the pretenders, then you have the contenders. And then, but with APAC, it's like, okay, you have a clear cut top, one or two. You have a clear cut bottom team. And then everything in between, which is more than half the region, is just like jumbled together. You're like, okay, how is it go? How are things gonna happen here? Because there was a lot of times this past season where teams were jockeying for a position. There was a lot of movement there, and it's really hard to shake that feeling that we're going to be seeing the exact same thing this year. So doing APAC rankings is always just like blindly throwing darts at the board. You're hoping something's gonna hit, but you just don't know if anything's gonna actually land. And that's what I love about it. Like, any team can pick up a win on any given week, and that just brings a level of excitement that you just don't really get to see in another region. And it just sucks because for us, being in NA, the start times are just atrocious. Like, I'm not gonna wake up at 3, 4 o'clock in the morning when I have to work at 8 o'clock to watch a couple of Overwatch League games. No, everything has to be watched on VOD at that point, but that's besides the point. But anyways, the Valiant rank number 8th. Um, I don't know where anyone else could feasibly rank them at this point. uh,
yeah, I mean honestly,
now,
uh,
now this is where things get interesting because there are a couple of teams that I was like, you know, I am not liking the direction that they're taking, or I just feel like they downgraded compared to what we saw from them last season. And then there's other teams that have a proven awful track record in the region, and you're just like, okay, which one of these is going to outweigh the other? Because as someone who closely followed Fusion University, I remember what happened every time they went to Korea, whether it was, for the gauntlet, whether it was actually moving to Contender's career, whether it was during the rebrand as T1, whether it was last season with the Fusion going to the playoffs and getting completely shat on. Like, there are so many elements at play that can be destructive in APAC. I don't trust the Fusion's track record, but I trust them enough to not put them seventh in the region.
oh, all right.
So, the other two teams that came to my mind were the New York Excelsior, and that was only because I look at the direction that this team is taken, and on paper, this team just does not have the same strengths that they did in these last couple of seasons. Bianca had some moments, but he also had a couple of grabs that I'm sure he wants to have back. Yakpon is kind of like on a road to redemption at this point, so we got a completely brand new tank line. They bring in Friday, who I'm obviously not super familiar with, to get paired with Jonak. And then we have basically an all new DPS rotation of Feather, Flora, Ivy, and Guanmoon. So that's a lot of moving parts from a team that basically had its feet underneath them these past 3 seasons that had consistent results. And now all of a sudden, this is basically a rebuild around Jonek at this point. And I'm kind of worried about that because we've seen the support Jonak strategy that this team once incorporated does not have the same impact that it once did. We're not seeing the Mercy Zenyatta play. We're not seeing the boosted damage amplification on Jonek where he's just able to legit carry the games. And I don't think he's had necessarily the same effect as he had on Anna this past season as well. So there's a lot of unknowns there. But at the same time, you have a team like the Chengdu Hunters who they have so many pieces on this roster. You know, this is one of the Chinese orgs that are full Chinese. So this is a national team, but you know, you look at some of the signings that they've made, or you even look at their tank lineup that has basically stayed the same outside of picking up Gaga, which I thought was a massive signing off of his Sigma play alone, but everything else they kind of kept intact here. And I know a lot of people were like really excited because Ball was really coming into play. But we've seen a number of Wrecking Ball nerfs, and by the time the Overwatch League hits, who knows what sort of effectiveness Ball is actually going to have outside of control. So I'm very conflicted, Ernura, but I know one of these two teams was the one that you were looking at primarily for the 7th slot. So who do you have?
I have the Chengdu Hunters, um, which is crazy, and I don't know why, but every time I look at it, because I have, for me in my Excel, I don't know why I feel high about this team. I don't know. Maybe it's the rookie kind of feel of them that I feel like I think their DPS line could be dirty. And so I don't I have them. I'm saving them for later. Um, but I think that Chengdu Hunters has improved a lot, and I think they will be taking some games. But with how competitive this season will be, I feel that they could end up kind of falling down again. Which does I mean for me, it really does feel like the APAC will be like everyone else, and like the top two teams will probably make it almost every single time. Then everyone else will try to like fill in or like at least make most tournaments. But for me, they added Jimmy as a hit scan and Kaneki as the tracer, flex DBS player. I think it's interesting. I think that we don't have a lot of tape on them, and so I'm excited to see more of them. They seem all right from what we saw in one of the preseason games with them, but I think that's pretty early on. I think they both had. I think they kept Leave and Jinmu as well, and both of these players they've had good years. I think season two for both of them. That era was really good for both Leave and Jinmu. I do feel like they fell off this last year. I didn't see a lot of amazing plays from Jinmu, and Leave did not live up to the hype that I thought he would. Sadly, and so if they can come up to the level that they well, I mean, season two around that era, I think it was 2019. They both looked really really good. They can live up to that. If Lee come up, if Jimmy and Kaneki are actually really really good pickups, and I'm just sleeping on them, then yeah, they can do really good. But right now, I'm betting on them playing pretty mediocrely. Um, that's just my bet. I don't know. I'm not that high on them. And then I think their best pickup so far for Chengdu has been Gaga, their new main tank. I think he has a first of all pretty equal, if not a little bit better ball than a Meng. It's really good in other tank regions areas. I think they could do really well, but I think that this player, if they do it right, can finally get them away from the we only play ball style. But I don't know how well they're going to do compared to other teams on that. They kept Elsa. Elsa's been all right. Maybe he'll improve this year. I mean, they got RUI back, their old head coach from season two. They have Late Young on a two-way as well. But I just don't have much to say about Elsa Late Young. They're just kind of all right. I don't know. Maybe Elsa's better than I'm thinking. Their support line's interesting. They have Nisha, Far Away, 1987. Both of these, I've heard good things about Far Away, but I'm not gonna rank them too highly until I really see them play. For me, I don't know why. I just feel like they could fall flat again this year, and I'm hoping they improve. I do think it's going to be even more competitive than last year in the APAC region. So hopefully we can still see really good results from them. But other than that, I think we're doing pretty good. I think that there's just teams that either have higher potential in general, or I just think have built a more ranged roster. If that makes sense. Like I feel
Mhm.
like this team could still come pretty one dimensional sometimes.
Yeah, I can definitely agree with that, and I think part of it too is ever since they incorporated Rolock, switching to 2-2-2, there were definitely a couple of teams before that who were running triple DPS, and it was primarily the Chengdu Hunters and the Shanghai Dragons. And as soon as that was implemented, we kind of got a better look at how much depth there was on the DPS lineup on both sides. It was very skewed in the fact that, well, Shanghai were able to make the adjustment, and they've been able to follow through basically ever since then. Whereas the Chengdu Hunters, they kind of lost their identity. Initially it was all okay, like we're just gonna run ball and we're just gonna keep running this and hitting you in the face with it until you can figure out how to stop it. And then after that, there was kind of like that feeling out process where they're like, all right, well, what's option B? And then it's been a situation where they just haven't been able to find their footing ever since that point. I really enjoy Leaves DBS play. He has a lot of flexibility on this team, but him and Jinmu have both taken a back seat compared to some of the other DPS duos in this region. So overall, like I would also put Shane Do seventh, but I don't know. I still have my doubts about the New York Excelsior. I cannot
That's
imagine
fair as
them
well. Yeah.
having the same results this season. Time will tell.
Right. No, I
Time will
completely
tell.
agree with you as well. I think we just have like a little bit different taste. It's a weird one. I mean, honestly, both of these teams are pretty hard to predict, and I think East in general is going to be super difficult.
Mhm.
I think I've seen pretty similar things for the West on most power rankings I've seen, and then the East have just been all over the
Right.
place. So it's one of those things where it's like, well, at the end of the day, we really have to wait and see. But still, I want to be right, and I hope I am. So.
But I wonder how much of Chengdu's ranking, at least by other people, is how much they actually want to believe in the Giga Chad Amen. Like I feel like there's just that intangible effect that Amen has on people, where it just makes people see the hunters in a different light entirely.
Yeah, no, 100%. It kind of gives me season one Shanghai vibes, where like, please just be good.
Mhm.
But in that case, they actually have been good in certain metas. I'm hoping to see Chengdu at least in one of the major tournaments, like one of the mixing of NA and the Western Conference, NA and APAC, or Western and Eastern Conference. I'm hoping to see them once. I think that'd be super fun, but who knows? It's going to be a hard year. I feel like every game matters more and more, and so if you have a tough schedule, which Chengdu's will probably have a really tough schedule. I haven't been able to check it, but it's going to be rough. I mean, it's really do or die this year. You can't really just do bad and then be like, well, we got 30 more games, or we got 16 more games to do. It's like, well, you
Mhm.
have only 16 games. And so, yeah, you got to be tougher on some teams that are meta dependent.
Right. All right, so let's shift over to the West. All right, so we got 12 teams in the West this season. We got a couple of teams coming over from Aipac, or I know London definitely moved over. I'm trying to remember if there were any other teams that swapped. I think it was just London.
Yeah, I think just London.
which is definitely an interesting choice. But I'll talk about London here in a little bit because I'm pretty sure we will both have them in bottom four. But anyways, okay, so
Ooh, okay.
NA is definitely a curious case this year. We've seen a lot of changes on some of these teams. Some returning players who had moved over onto Cassin. We've seen others primarily sticking to their guns here. We have soft rebrands happening. And then we have whatever the hell Vancouver is doing.
Yeah, Vancouver.
All
Gotta
right.
love them.
So I have the Titans as 12th. And this pains me. Obviously I'm still a little upset over the entire Titans fallout situation, but that's besides the point. But when you look at this team, they have a 7-man roster. You have Dalton, Teru, and Linkser as your DPS rotation. You have Shredlock and Fried Wiener at the tank line, and then you have Fire and Rolf for your support line. Now, I really like Dalton. I am not really sold on the other aspects of this team. And it's really hard because, the Titans were a very young roster. They came into the league and like I don't want to say it was an opportune time for most of the players. I felt like they still needed a lot of seasoning. And when they entered the league after the whole runaway fallout, they were basically just thrust in this position where they're like, okay, just go out and play. Like, it wasn't about trying to salvage the season or anything like that. It was just an uphill battle through and through. And when things didn't work out, like, I can't say that I'm surprised by the fact that the Titans decided to trim away some of the fat. Like, that, it made sense given the situation that they had put themselves in. But man, when you just look at this team and you look at some of the other lineups, or just the number of sign-ins or depth that the other teams have, the Titans just come up short on, honestly, like, there's not one line on this team that I can surefire say is better than another team, and that petrifies me. Like, I'm really worried that it's going to be another feeling out process where the Titans are gonna spend half of the season trying to figure out what sort of team they are or what their strengths are going to be. And all these other teams are already going to have like that synergy down, and maybe not to a science, but they're at least going to have enough of an identity to be able to carry themselves through to more wins at that point. So I don't know. Like, Dalton's not enough to sway my decision on where the Titans are going to finish this season.
Yeah, I mean, I don't blame you because I have them at 12 as well. I mean, the Vancouver org, they said they wanted an underdog. Well, these dogs are about 10 feet underground. This is the most under you can get for a dog. It's it's a rough one. I think for me, I have a little faith in. They have the two Atlanta pickups, FRD, or actually, I think it's full fried wiener now, or
Yeah, it's
FRD
it's
WNR.
it's back to fried.
Is it back to fried? Okay. But anyway, we got him, and then I think that Fire could do some things with this team as a main support, really bring them together. I've only heard good things about his shot calling as well as his leadership, but there's only a certain amount of things you can do with leadership and then without talent. I think Teru was one guy I want to talk about how he was benched for Pelican. Pelican, amazing player, but to do that, being a starter in the Overwatch League is very scary as an aspect for anyone who's looking at that. It's like, ooh, you were a backup on a contenders team, and now you're going to start as the flex DPS of an Overwatch League team. Okay, we'll have to wait to see that. I think honestly, for a lot of people, everyone's like, just try to keep Shockwave. If you keep
Mhm.
Shockwave, more players will come. Like you can really build off that. That should have been the player they built off of. They couldn't pay for him, so they couldn't get him. That sucks. That's honestly one of the biggest downfalls of this team. I think Rolf is underwhelming. Shredlock has a lot to prove still. It's just there's a lot of problems. I think Dalton, yeah, Dalton Linkster could pop off sometimes, but I mean, he's still streaky sometimes. It's
Right.
one of those things where it's like, yeah, it's going to take the right meta and the right time for this team to win. I see it happening. I see them winning a few games, maybe two or three. Um, they could win more too, but I don't know. I see this team signing a player or two just to try to up their status a little bit during the half, probably early or midway through the season. I don't see them keeping everyone. I think that they have some pieces they'll be able to build off in the future, but right now this is just a. It would have been a decent team, maybe season two, but with everyone improving, it's not there. This isn't a good team. It's sad to say, but they're easily the worst team in NA. I think the rest can be almost interpreted during like for certain things switching, but this is easily number 12.
Mhm.
And so yeah, it's hard to say that because I like their coaching staff. I like their because there's Second Wind. I love Second Wind. I love them in contenders. And I do think they have a plan, but their plan isn't to win. It's to improve with the players they have, and so we don't know what that means depending on their talent right now. And so yeah, no, they're easily 12th.
Yeah, this is a team that on paper definitely seems more of a double hit scan type team. Stuff like the Tracer Ash or Tracer Echo with still prominence.
Yeah,
I would feel a lot better, but we've seen shifts in the meta. Even since Tracer Ash, and then most recently with Echo and Tracer. So it's like right now, I don't know, because even in Linkser's situation this past season with the Outlaws, like he was basically playing control. And the
yeah.
Outlaws were horrible on control.
Oh yeah, they always have been.
So it's just like, well, that's didn't paint him in the best light, knowing that his map win record wasn't all that stellar. So when he got signed, it was definitely an eyebrow raiser, more so than just the fact that the fans couldn't actually spell his name right, which I thought was interesting as well, because it was like Linsker. Yeah, that's it.
Right.
Yeah. I'm like,
Sounds about right.
yeah.
You
Uh,
compare him to a hockey player, he's
yeah, that was the other weird thing that we saw was like the side by side with the Titans and the Vancouver Canucks, and you have people
it's
who are like,
ridiculous.
what are these stats? And
Ridiculous.
I get it, like they're owned by the same investors, but you can't correlate anything that happens in hockey to what's going on with the Titans or esports, really.
You're
I don't know, just
right.
weird
Yeah, no, it's
weird
crazy. It's like,
choice.
ooh, kills and shots on goal. I don't know, man. It's not you can't rank them, but you know, good on them for trying. It's like, hey,
Hmm.
we're told to do this, and everyone's like, this is terrible, and they're like, all right, we'll do it again. All right, sounds good. See you soon. Can't wait for the next one. But yeah, no, it's an interesting one. I've
Hmm.
never liked their social media stance, but even when they were in season two, I feel like they didn't do enough with what they had um, with Vancouver Titans um, and Runaway. But uh, it seems like they know what they want and they're getting what they want, but it's just not fun for everyone else. So
Yeah, I
uh,
think the only time that any sort of crossover will be relatable by Overwatch League standards would be if we saw Gritty, who
yeah,
is the Philadelphia mascot or Flyers,
the Flyers,
maybe
yeah,
just beating the crap out of a Sasquatch for the Titans. That'd be the only time it would ever make any sense because you would just have to assume that they would have to be bitter rivals. I don't know.
makes sense to me. No, that makes
Well,
complete sense to me.
I guess we'll
Just
never know until the playoffs. But then, even then, both of those teams would actually have to make it to the playoffs. So that remains to be seen.
yeah, we'll
one step,
see.
one
Yeah,
step at a time. Okay, like we got to get there
worry
first.
about that. That's future us problem if that
Hmm.
ever happens.
Absolutely.
If
All right. Moving on. All right, so number 11. This is another team who's getting talked a lot about during the offseason. I put the Paris Eternal at number 11. And yeah, this really hurts because like I really like EU contenders. But at the end of the day, you see the as like the mass exodus that this team had. And everything was kind of put on Vala's plate, which is a very tall task. And we saw the amount of criticism or the amount of like added pressure that was being put on Vala about like the way that they were handling the social media or the lack of the sign-ins or how they handled the releases and everything like that. And everything kind of just like spun out of control where like a lot of that blame was being put on her even though like she was really the one woman show over for Paris Eternal. And now this is going to be one of those situations where we'll get to see like did that pressure get to her? Like were there better options out there? I'm sure people are going to argue that they didn't get the top EU talent. But at the end of the day, I'm going to put more stock value in teams that I've already seen play over teams that are coming in basically from scratch, from a season to season basis. And it's kind of weird in a way too because we've kind of seen like the exodus happening over to another Overwatch League team and seeing kind of like the polarizing effect that has had on league perception of that particular team is also another very interesting tidbit as well because a lot of people are looking at Dallas as like this mega team at this point. I don't think they're there. They could be on their way, but a lot of people are trying to like blow this entire thing out of proportion. But for Paris, this is a make do with what you have type of season, and I have more faith in the EU talent than I do than what we've seen from the Titans so far. And like we've got didn't Paris play in one of the exhibition matches?
Yeah, they played in the Steel Series tournament.
Okay, I
They went.
remember I saw a couple of maps. I didn't watch the entire tournament, but it was a work in progress for sure. There was a lot of sloppy plays.
There
Um,
was, but they did go to map 5 with Boston. I thought that was
they did. And a lot of people are
impressive.
higher up on Boston, all things considered. This isn't the same Boston that we saw this past season. So in a way, it was a good way to kind of say like, okay, Boston is starting to come together, but Paris is still trying to sort things out at this point. So this could be another team that might not hit their stride until mid-season.
Yeah, I mean, I have them at 11 too. For me, it's just I feel like this team has tons of potential. Honestly, I think there's a lot of good players on here, but this is not the year for that. They even talk. I didn't put in their support line. Their support line, I think it's Khan and Neptuno. I think
Mhm.
those are actually a really solid support line. I've heard great things about their flex support. Neptuno I've always liked. I feel like he kind of got screwed over last year with visa issues.
He did.
And but I think that he's really a leader that they can look forward to. I think Naga looked pretty good. As soon as their treasure specialist Oden God had a really tough year last year because he had to fill in for well after like winning contenders with Team Doge, he had a tough year, but because he had to fill in for Decay on fuel, and how are you going to do
Yeah,
that?
those are
That's
big shoes to fill.
yeah, really. Yeah, those are like size 14 shoes or something. It's gonna be really cool to see if this DPS line can contest with other teams. I think that's going to be really fun to watch. No matter what, Paris Eternal for me is going to be really fun to watch and just see how they progress. I think later on they could be really good too. But I think early in the season they're probably going to get their butts whooped while they're trying to figure everything out. I think Elivote Don is honestly probably the most interesting to me of this thing, of this whole experiment. Kind of it feels like an experiment of EU talent. I think Don, from what we saw, looked pretty solid as a main tank. And Elivote, for me, before watching just full Korean, he looked like one of the best players. Um, and I really did like watching him play, but with the talent of flex tanks going around, I don't know where he fits in that. I don't know if he's mid tier. I don't know if he's below mid tier, but he, for me, interesting. It's just this team's just filled with a lot of question marks, and I think you talked about it earlier. It's really hard to rank a team with so many question marks, but I'd rather put in my stocks,
Mhm.
my Overwatch League stocks on a team that is more known, and like I could actually like rank them at least for NA. I think Eastern. I'm going for a lot of this player could be really good. But for me in NA, I think this is easily number 11. I think that they're going to be more competitive than what people are thinking, but they still probably end up near the bottom just based off of just how they were built,
Mhm.
which sucks. Yeah.
Yeah, now this is where things get interesting because like I had a hell of a time rounding out 10 and 9 on the NA side for the West. Because there are teams that I'm like, okay, like watching Steel Series, I was surprised by Boston. And I've really liked the changes that Boston has made. so, but there's always a part of me being the person who bet against Boston in the London versus Boston rivalry that we had on By the Numbers. That is just still going to dog on Boston, but I actually think London are going to do worse than Boston this season. I think the roles have reversed in this case, but there are so many teams right now that I feel like are interchangeable, kind of towards the bottom of NA.
Hmm.
London are a team that is another overhaul, who went EU, which is a direction that a lot of people wanted them to go. eh, when whenever all this shit blows over and we get back to home games, of course, if you're London, you want to have EU talent because it's better for your fan base. It's just easier to have engagement that way. It's gonna drive ticket sales. It's gonna drive merchandise and all of that. We just gotta get to that point. And, right out of the gate, London's like, all right, we're bringing in Blase. And I was not a fan.
You don't like Blase?
I am not a Blase fan. Well, like the Boston DPS core, whether it was Color Hex or Blase, I was not overly impressed by either outside of the Doomfist. And we're not in the Doomfist meta. We're not there. I have more faith in their other DPS that they picked up, but at the end of the day, it's all about like how much stock value do you put in EU. Like I feel like there's not too much that's gonna separate Paris and London going into this season. But London has the Shax factor in it, who watching the Valiant this past season, like Shax was definitely one of their MVP players on that team, and he's gonna be the glue that holds this team together, or the thing that makes them fall apart. So, like London's the team that is like on the bubble for me. Who I don't quite know what to expect from this team. The DPS potential is there, but I'm worried that they're just gonna go in and be like, all right, we're just gonna run Blase and Shax are gonna be our every down type backs, and then we're not gonna see the different iterations, and they're just going to be one dimensional at that point. And that's my major concern with the direction that this team has taken. Regardless of what results we saw from the British Hurricane over in Contenders EU, because they were by far the dominant team with a better coaching staff. But now it's time to put that to test within the Overwatch League. And for me, I'm not as sold on this team.
Yeah, I don't blame you there, honestly. I don't have them there. I have them a bit higher, but
Okay.
that's just because I have a little bit more faith in Blase and Shax. But we'll talk about that another day because I may or not have them next or whatever. But for me, I'm so glad Booker's not on here, so I don't have to hear his reaction because I have Houston Outlaws at 10.
Okay.
For me, this is honestly the most confusing team. They have the DPS line of Dante, Hydration, Happy, KSF, and Jake. For me, that's honestly super like it feels weird because they have three DPS players with heavily overlapping DPS characters with Jake, KSF, Hydration. Um, and so my main thing is I feel like they can't touch on all these players' best fits when you have so many players. But that's just me personally. Um, I feel like you definitely upgraded your hit scan player with Happy over Linkster. I think Happy's probably one of the best pickups they've had. It's a sleeper pickup as well. Not a lot of people are talking about it. Um, and Dante's always been really, really good. He's been their star for years. I just, in general, I see this team doing pretty good in some metas, but
Mhm.
sometimes, like if it's double hit scan, of course, I think they're going to do really, really good if it's Happy Dante. But finding a spot for hydration, KSF and Jake, which I always forget KSF's on this team just because I have so many players. I think it's going to be super interesting. It's just confusing on when do you play who.
Mhm.
Like I think hydration and Jake have really good junk rats. Um, and it's like things like that where you just like you keep going further. Who's gonna play Farah? Who's gonna do this? Are they just gonna have hydration be the ultimate flex again? What's gonna go on with the DPS? Yeah, it's just for me, unless it's like a double hit scan, I don't see them having the best DPS in the line, which is interesting to me. Um, but they're not even my main problem with this team. I think that Piggy and Jangu, from it's an interesting experiment. I think they could honestly be really really good, but there's just such a question mark for me. And from what I've been hearing, which is I it's not a lot. It's not a lot. I don't get a lot of outside information, but from what I have been hearing, is they just haven't performed to the level they needed yet. I'm worried about this team and working with a mixed roster. Even though they have a really good coaching staff, and I really should believe in them more. I don't. Piggy Jongu, they have to prove that they can't. Last year they looked really good, but that was during the I think it was Arissa Hog meta. I don't remember exactly, but it worries me that they can't fully or maybe it was Sigma. Either way, it's just I don't know if Diva comes back and they play Diva, things like that. It's just concerning to me. And then Crimzo Juby could be really really good. I don't see like Crimzo had great stats despite being on a lackluster Dallas Fuel. I've heard good things about Juby. Could be really good, and I would honestly be really excited if I was wrong about this team, but I just don't have a good feeling about them.
Mhm.
And that's really the only reason I have them here. It's just I don't get the direction. I don't get what they're doing with the roster, so it makes me weary about them. And that's honestly the only reason I have them here. Um, which kind of sucks. But where'd they go? Did I delete them? No. Okay. We're good. I was like, they just disappeared. But yeah, I
They
have
fell
them at
into the
11th.
abyss. That's what happened.
Yeah, honestly, that was crazy. But that's just honestly where I have them. I'm happy to be wrong. Booger's probably gonna kill me next time he sees me, but I'll live with it.
I think for me the biggest thing about this team, as you mentioned, is a tank line. I think personal like investment, I want to see how good Juby does in the Overwatch League, knowing that this is a
Uh-huh.
collegiate player coming in, and that in itself is really a big deal with how much collegiate esports has really been getting pushed to the forefront, where we've seen more sponsorships coming through. We've seen more scholarships coming through as well. So it's really exciting times to see, oh, right, like here's the kid getting thrust into the Overwatch League after having some pretty damn good success at the collegiate level. And, with
Hmm.
everything that Maryville's been doing on that front, and Saints or whatever the heck they're going by. I don't know. It changes all the effing time. But when Houston went out of their way and they picked up Crimso, that really opened up my eyes. And I was like, okay, like this is going to look like a different team. And then more of the signings came in, and then I retracted my statement. like like it
You're like,
kind of
oh wait.
it kind of tempered my expectations or my excitement to a degree. Like I agree. Like when you look at the DPS rotation, there are a lot of question marks. There have been teams in the past that have been front loaded on DPS that had a lot of overlap, and in those situations, and I'll use like New York for example. You had a flex DPS player who was basically in an ever situation, and then anyone who had an overlapping hero pool to that was always sitting on the bench. And when I look at this team, I figure, okay, well, Dante is the strongest player on this team at that spot. So like he's gonna be your everyday spot there. And it's just like, okay, well then who are they gonna flex in? Like I'm glad that Jake is back as a player.
Yeah.
I thought as a caster he did really well with the opportunities that he was given. And it was very clear just listening to him talk that his passion to play was still there. That wasn't something that had subsided. So like he still has like that desire to compete. And he has a great mind. So seeing him transition into more of a player coach, I think is definitely the right decision to make. It's just a matter of at this point in time, where is Jake as a player? Because Jake has probably been one of the more polarizing figures within the Overwatch League, at least from an in-game talent perspective. Everyone looks at him as kind of like the face of the franchise, which bringing him back into the fold is a very smart move by the Outlaws organization. And I'm sure they're going to retire his jersey whenever he decides to transition into that coaching role. But even when Jake was a player, now this was at a time when, like, you would see the off-kilter, like, Junkrat defense on Temple of Anubis and on King's Row. You're not really seeing a ton of situations where Junkrat is really seeing play, and I don't know if I would necessarily pick him in some of these other projectile roles over someone like Hydration. So it's just like I don't know what role he's going to have outside of player coaching. Like I don't think he's going to be seeing as much playtime as maybe he initially anticipated. But I don't think that necessarily is going to like dissuade where this team is going to be in the grand scheme of things. Like it's not going to suddenly make this a mid-table team or on the upper half or anything like that. Like it's just gonna be a minor
Right.
differential. So for me, like my biggest thing is the tank line. The
Yeah.
DPS line could be hit or miss depending on what they decide to do. Are we gonna see the outlaw typical stance of them having accidental substitutions and people playing in maps that they shouldn't be in? I don't know. I kind of expect it at this point because that's just kind of their MO.
They do. They're
But
the best at it.
you have a tank line that is at least familiar with one another. And we have seen these contenders pairings come up and maybe not quite hit the stride that the community would have expected them to. And I think the best comparison that you could have, at least on that front, is with Atlanta Reign with Gator and Hawk. A lot of people were very high on Atlanta Academy. And when they came up to the Overwatch League on the Atlanta Reign, getting their promotion, we just didn't see Gator all that much. And the off position on the Reign was that revolving door. Everyone was wondering what was going on there. So I don't really feel like they were given the opportunity to really showcase what they were worth. But in the Outlaws case, I'm not I think Jongu and Piggy will have more opportunities there. But I'm worried that they're just going to go back to the safety net of having hydration flex over to fill the main tank role again. And if that happens, like I feel like that is going to be the nail in the coffin for this team. I do have them this is ninth overall. So I have them a little bit higher up than you, but it's kind of hard to shake just the retreats that we have seen from this team in particular, knowing that it's been a recurrent theme on a season to season basis where they've been bad at control. Their substitutions have been an absolute mess. A lot of people put a lot of stock in Harsha, and he hasn't quite delivered to the extent that a lot of people would have expected him to. And when you just factor all of that stuff in, it's kind of hard to push past that point.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. It's just it's hard to rank this team highly. Um, Especially it's such an interesting. I like if Piggy and Jangu like work out. I like it a lot. Like it's kind of like a balls player. Like, hey, I'm putting all my money. It feels like you're putting all your eggs in one basket and hoping you just like you're putting all your money on red, hoping you hit it. But if it doesn't hit, this team can go down fast. I mean, fast. And so it's one of those things where unless they really, really perform to a higher level than even I'm imagining, I don't see this team hitting a top six, top five. You know, it's like I really, if they perform, I can see Houston Outlaws in the top six. That's like the highest I could see. But for me, it's sorry, I just saw the message. But yeah, it's one of those things where I can't put them higher just based off of confusion.
Mhm.
Honestly, confusion, which sucks. But you had him at ninth. Should I talk
Mhm.
about my ninth then?
Absolutely.
I have the ever up 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 of the risings. I have Boston Uprising. I didn't have a good memo for them, but it's an interesting one. Most people will say that I'm like underrating Boston, but I promise I'm not. This is honestly a really good spot for them. They have improved a lot. They have a lot of talent, and Laurie should be able to do a lot for this team. I think they added Valentine, I am 37, and soon three great DPS players. I am 37. I don't know about how much he's improved as a player past, but his hit scan's been insane. Still, it was insane. It's just his playmaking wasn't always the best. Valentine's probably the best flex DPS they've had in a long time. And soon's probably be the straight tracer specialist. They still have color hex. I don't really know what they're gonna do with him. I feel like anytime they could play color hex, they should play Valentine. Sucks. I Valentine probably be a top flex. Honestly, will probably be a top flex in the league. I don't know how high he's gonna go. Um, I mean, shoot. And my main question mark in the DPS line is color hex. I think they actually have built a pretty solid DPS core. Tank line for me is where it starts kind of falling apart a little bit. With Stand One joining fusions and Punk. For me, I think Stand One's a solid tank player. I do. I don't have him ranked super highly. I think he had a really easy season when he has like the support line of Shanghai, the DPS line of Shanghai to look good. And they still lost some maps with him in. It's worrisome for sure. Fusions probably would be their main. No, I think their Reinhardt specialist. Punk is probably my biggest question mark. If he doesn't perform, like we've only seen a limited amount of him in the Overwatch League, which he's looked good in some metas. But if he doesn't perform, then I really just don't know what they're gonna do with him. Um, and so, I mean, I really don't see this tank line hitting a top tier tank line. I think they're probably mediocre, mid tier at best, which sucks. And then their support line's really good too. I mean, their support line's good with Faith. I've heard great things about him. And then Myungbun, probably one of the best flex supports. This team will have better results and they will win some impressive games. I just don't. I first of all, I don't always believe in the Boss Uprising system. I am glad it's changing a bit, but it's one of those things where even if the coaching's good and the players are good, I don't know how the org's gonna react to the coaching and all that stuff. Like I don't know if the org's gonna do the best for this team, as well as like I'm ranking them at like the lowest I could see them because of the Boston Uprising. I don't see them ever going past where they're supposed to be. You know, I don't know.
Uh-huh.
I always rank them the lowest I can just because I don't see them. And the lowest they can when there's four teams ahead of you or three teams ahead of you is really good for them at least because they're their previous things. But
Yeah, their track record
uh,
kind of speaks for itself.
yeah, it's one of those things where I might be crazy for this, but and I'd love to be proven wrong, but I for me they could easily be top six if they play as good as possible. But with how they looked in the small tournament in the preseason, I was impressed by some aspects, and they can definitely improve from there. And I shouldn't be ranking them off of that, but I thought they'd be better than where they were. And that's really I thought they'd be better from the get go, and they weren't as good as I imagined, and that kind of sucked. and so that's why I have them kind of lower. It's like when I
Mhm.
saw them play, I was like, okay, they have some good things going for them, but it's not where I thought they'd be at that time. They always have time to improve, but I've also looked at their they do not have a good schedule either, and it really does suck for them. And so it's one of those things I can't remember all of the things, but I see them going 0-3, and they're going to be a pretty good team. And
Mhm.
so before they even have like a winnable game, for me, yeah, I think that they're going to be better, obviously better, and I think they could make a tournament. Hopefully they will, but for me right now, they're ninth.
Yeah, I think okay, so if I'm the uprising, I would look at two things in particular. One, I probably wouldn't even play fusions or checks at
Wouldn't
all.
either. Yeah,
I think color hacks only comes into play in a situation if they need to swap to a Zarya. And if they need to run Ryan Zarya, maybe that would be the case where fusions is the Ryan specialist. I think my big question, like I really like Valentine, but when you go back to Steel series, we saw a lot of the Genji coming out to play, which isn't necessarily something that's that common.
right. Yeah,
And like we have seen players in the past be able to pull out the Genji and it just click. Like it works time and time again. Obviously, Hoxel would probably be the first person that comes to mind after he sliced and diced his way through the Florida Mayhem in that one game, and there was just literally nothing they could do to counteract or just deal with it at that point. Um, but knowing that Genji has had very limited success in the Overwatch League worries me more about Boston overall than just the players on this team. Like I have more faith in Boston. I don't have them that much higher than what you do currently. I let's see. I don't have them right now, but I'd probably put them eighth just because I don't know if I'll be here for the next power rankings. But eighth or seventh would probably be where I would put them. So they would be more mid-table, in my opinion. But for me, I want to see more from Punk because Punk we primarily seen on the Diva. We haven't seen a lot of flexibility in that regard. So it's kind of like the X factor on this team in particular. Uh, soon I still feel like has plenty left to go at this point in his career, even though by esports standards, he's an old fart. Like, and I'm
right.
37, got thrust into the Overwatch League after speed running Open Division and Contenders, and honestly, he got dealt a shit hand. Because
He
at the
did,
time
yeah.
when he came into the league, it was during the Goats meta, and that was after a point where he basically played Brigida and Zarya in that competition. So then he's just like, all right, here I am. And then, there was that ongoing joke that he'd end up being the commish. That never happened, but now he's back in the Overwatch League. So I did not get to see anything of I'm 37 during his stint in Contender. So I don't know what the level of improvement from a player standpoint is. So like that could be the one thing to look at in regards to the Boston Uprising that could really push them to that next level. So if Valentine can be the flex DPS that this team is desperately needed, then that should be enough to prop them up. But they're going to
Right.
need help along the way. Like if they don't have that synergy on the DPS line, it's hard to see them pushing past that middle in point on the NA side of things. And obviously when it comes to the overall grand scheme of things in the league, things are definitely going to get a bit more dicier with where you're going to rank a team like Boston overall. But I,
Yeah.
I I think for a team that has not had the best reputation, that a lot of people have expected a lot from in the past, that Boston have put themselves into a position where they can put their best foot forward and actually win some games and just not look like the bottom of the barrel team. And that really excites me because, last season, really the only time I was excited for a Boston game was never. So
Oh, I was
it's a
excited for
change.
the Houston Boston game
Change.
every single
It
time.
was a change of pace. I mean, you might look forward to it for completely different reasons.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But
No,
that's
I was looking
besides the
forward
point.
to to the shit show and getting some popcorn and watching. It's like the bad B movie. You're like, all right,
Mm,
it's time to watch something that's turn my brain off, just laugh for a bit.
right.
But yeah, yeah, it's they're gonna be better, and I think they're gonna win some games that are gonna be really surprising. And I it's just you get dealt when you have a better team than everyone else, but not what you've had a better team than you've had in the last 2 or 3 years, obviously. But the problem is that everyone's upgrading this year. I think
Hmm.
this is probably going to be the most competitive year we've ever seen. It's rough. It's one of those things where you really you gotta deal with what you got, and who knows? Maybe this year we'll see some team that everyone thought was gonna be super bad be amazing. But for me right now, Boston just isn't that for me. I think they have limitations of what they can do, and that's kind of sucky.
Hmm.
But
But at the end of the day, Nura, they have to do better than 2 wins.
yes,
That's
and
not a tall order by any
they
stretch
have
of the
less
imagination.
games, but they will they
They do.
will. I can guarantee you they will do that. They will.
I would not put it past Boston to double that number.
Yes, I yeah, 100%. They can double their wins from last year. And I think that's impressive.
In
So
less games, which is more than some of these other teams can be saying.
yeah, shoot.
Because I don't know, like
Yeah.
having like a 96 win rate is gonna be hard to duplicate, especially for Philadelphia. But we'll be talking about that team in a future episode of our power rankings, and that is honestly the team that I'm gonna try to follow the closest, if only because I'm personally invested in it, knowing that, all right, like I've seen every iteration of this team in Korea. Is this going to be the one that breaks the streak? Like that storyline is going to
Does
be
history repeat itself?
fantastic. Or does history continue to repeat itself for the fourth time?
Jeez.
So good.
I yeah, it's a smaller roster for. Oh, we'll talk about Philly later, but it's just an interesting team. I don't know
Hmm.
what to think about them for sure, but yeah, I think we're good. Do you have the notes, the closing
Do
notes?
I have the? Of course I do.
Okay, I was like, I'm hoping you do.
I
I think
think I'd come unprepared for a podcast. That's besides the point. But
no,
anyways, all right,
no.
guys. So we want to
Same.
help us out. Obviously, the best thing to do is head on over to iTunes or your podcasting app of choice. iTunes is obviously kind of like the go-to, even if Spotify viewership has been through the roof. I don't know if you saw the data. Overall podcast viewership actually surpassed
Oh,
iTunes, which is absolutely crazy. I never would have thought that when Spotify first announced it. But anyways, that is completely besides the point. If you guys want to help us out, please leave us a review over on iTunes or Spotify or whichever podcatcher you use. We are always looking for ways to improve, and obviously with the season getting underway very shortly, hopefully our episodes will be a little bit more recurrent. Obviously, there's been a lot of stuff going on with both Anura and Booger, and don't be surprised if I pop in from time to time during the season if schedule allows it, since I do work mid shift. But anyways, outside of that, if you're looking for additional Overwatch related content, check out Overwatch Recall, which is our podcast directory of all things Overwatch. And that is available on our website, which I will show here in just a few minutes. If you would like to support our network directly, as well as this podcast, you consider pledging to our Patreon page, where we have tiers starting at just $1 a month. You can find more information there at patreon.com/OWL Network, where you too can join the likes of our master and above patrons of Daniel, Owl, and Kesha in helping our network grow. Now, outside of that, we have a number of ways you can contact us. You can email the show at contact@owlnshow.com. You could follow our website and find all our latest episodes there at www.owrecall.com. This show is on Twitter at OWLN Show. We also have our YouTube channel at youtube.com/Overwatch League Network, as well as our community Discord, where you can chat with us about all things Overwatch and Overwatch League at discord.me/OWLN Show. And we do stream on Twitch at twitch.tv/OWLN Show, where, our schedule is kind of all over the place. I'm not going to say the exact times, but usually Overwatch League Network is typically on Mondays at 10 a.m. Pacific time. We have OWL by the numbers coming back here shortly Date to be determined, but that will be airing Tuesdays at 6 p.m. Pacific time throughout the Overwatch League season. Right now, we're currently on hiatus, but we should be back here in a few weeks. We also have Heroes Never Die, which has been recorded bi weekly. It is our variety Overwatch show, Wednesdays at 5 p.m. Pacific time. And of course, if you are looking to reach us via social media, you can find all of our hosts on Twitter. You can follow Booger, our typical host, at Booger Brains. You can find myself, Tumbly Drunk, on Twitter at Tumbly Drunk. And Anura, you changed your handle so many times, I don't even have it updated in my notes. What is it right now?
Anura CC, ANURACC, for obvious reasons of I like Brigida and May and the Earth Shatter, the other ones. But yeah, it's mostly just because I don't have one right now, and I'll just keep it like this for a while
Until you
until I
change
find
it
something
like
funny.
12 other times in
Yes,
the season. Yeah.
that's great. Yeah, there's nothing going on right now, so it'll be a NeuroCC. It's like my go-to whenever I don't have one. So yeah, I think that's where you can find me.
All right, perfect. Well, that is going to do us this afternoon on Overwatch League Network. You've been listening to episode 157. I've been your temporary host, Tumbly Drug, joined this week by Nura. And of course, we'll continue our power rankings on our next episode and beyond. Everyone, enjoy your weeks, and I will see you whenever. Take care.